Why does everyone hate Elphelt?
All right, we're getting off to a good start here. I guess we should start by clarifying, one, we're talking Exert Elphelt here, right? That's the meme. I don't think Strive Elphelt has really done much to deserve the widespread hatred that she receives in Guilty Gear Xrd. But two, Guilty Gear players are kind of known for just hating every Guilty Gear character, including their own. There's that classic meme of the two girls fighting while there's a third dude in the picture and he's smoking some weed, and they're all labeled Guilty Gear players. That is extremely true. Trivially, just every Guilty Gear player pretty much hates everybody, often including their own character matchup. I like to say that if a Guilty Gear player thinks the matchup is like fair or fine or whatever, like if they're not that ruffled by it, it's a good matchup for them. They might not call it a good matchup, but it's a good matchup. Everyone gets hated on all the time. However, it is an interesting question to talk about what kinds of things go into hating a fighting game character. And I think there are kind of three different axes by which you can hate a fighting game character. The first is the actual like character design, their identity, how they look, how they talk, how they move. One of my personal favorite examples of this, I think on that axis personally, I think Elphelt is cute. I like her. I do remember relatively early on in my Xrd career, I was playing a long set against an Elphelt. I was not thrilled with how the set was going. Irene over there was just kind of, she wasn't playing Guilty Gear at that point, and she was just like, oh, why don't you take her on her haunted house date? Right? And I had to explain, like, look, you don't play this game right now, but when you do, you will understand why no one wants to take her on her haunted house date. That's it. I think she's cute. I think she's endearing. I think the Guns N' Roses thing is clever. You get a whole lot of puns and jokes off the combination of guns and bridle. But actually, my go-to example for hating a character based off of the character and not what they do in gameplay is Byakuya in Uni. Because he has this win pose where when he beats you in a round, he laughs at you. Like, he looks down at you and he laughs at you. And that's like unnecessarily toxic to me. Like, I take that personally. Like, it feels like he hates you while he's beating your ass, but then afterwards he kind of confirms the contempt, you know? So there are all kinds of things in a character that can just kind of set you off in different ways. And I think for the character design specifically, like, Elphelt is polarizing when it comes to her character design, because either you think she's cute and she's funny and her attack animations are endearing, or you can't stand it. And especially with people who are drawn to the kind of edgier, grittier metal aesthetic of older Guilty Gears like X and XX. Elphelt is nothing like the XX character. She's very much in the Xrd line of more cartoony, more anime character designs. And so I think there's a certain segment of people who just dislike Elphelt based on that. So that's one, character design. And I think in terms of the actual design of the character, like how hateable she is, I'd give her like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. We'll say 7 out of 10. If you're there for it, you're there for it. And I'm personally am there for it. Actually, one of the underrated things about Elphelt is for the sign version, the actress Cassandra Lee Morris, who did the dub, the English dub for Xrd Sign, also used to briefly freelance at a bridal magazine. So there's some fun little like synergy there, you know. But I think there are plenty of people who dislike her just based on the theme alone. The second kind of bucket of hate that I would consider for a fighting game character, I don't like the game they force me to play. And again, for Guilty Gear players, we have kind of a tricky relationship to this, because every Guilty Gear character has like way more tools than the average fighting game, like non-Guilty Gear fighting game character. Normally you'd think of it as like, I don't like being zoned out. If you hate playing against zoners, it's because you don't like the game that the zoner is forcing you to play. You don't like feeling like there's resistance to traversing across the screen to make contact with your opponent, right? I personally hate playing against grapplers because I hate rock, paper, scissors. I hate having to guess, right? I'm like, if I block right, I should just be able to defend myself out of everything. And there are other people who hate playing against rushdown characters because they don't like the feeling of constantly getting mixed up and pressured and stuff like that. There's a whole lot of game in fighting games. When we play two characters, we're kind of creating a specific subset of that game to play against each other. And you might find that there's some things that you like more than other things in a video game, right? If you really like rock, paper, scissors, Virtua Fighter might be your shit, because every character in that game is always playing some pretty hard, like RPS between strikes and throws and movement and all that kind of stuff in ways that other games don't have as much of. But Guilty Gear is a weird one, especially Exerd and earlier Guilty Gears like XX, plus R, etc. Because there's so many different characters doing so many different things that inevitably you're going to have two characters that disagree pretty dramatically on what the game is, right? So if you have, often people will find a character that they dislike because they don't like the particular subset of the game that is created by the matchup between their character and the character they hate. Elphelt is a tricky one here because she has really good zoning tools, right? She has Pineberry, which is very easy to just throw out there, takes up a lot of space for a lot of time. She has her Far S, which is very good, her 5H, which is very good, her JD, which is very good, especially when Wire Seed. She has Sniper Stance, and those are all some pretty powerful zoning tools, right? So if you are trying to get in on Elphelt, she can make it very hard for you. I play one of the most mobile characters in all of fighting games, and I can have a hard time getting in on Elphelt sometimes. She's got really good damage, really good corner carry. It's not super hard to do a lot of her combos, and then once she gets you in the corner, she has the shotgun stance. Even if you try and block it, she's got Unblockable. She has a Pineberry that she can throw and toss on you to keep you in place of that projectile Oki. And then she's got the shotgun blasts, which are very fast, do a bunch of chip damage, crank up your risk, so you have to like FD, really hard to jump out of, and mostly can't be bursted. She's got really nasty rushdown patterns in the corner after she's zoned you and gotten you into the corner. And then she's got pretty nasty loopable set play, right? Because once she hits you, she'll get a combo that does a lot of damage. If you're not already in the corner, she puts you in the corner and then puts a Pineberry down and runs either some strike throw mix or an overhead or whatever. It all just kind of very consistently loops into itself. So if there's anything about a fighting game that you don't like, Elphelt probably has it, and she'll probably force you to play some of that game. So in terms of hateability there, 10 out of 10, right? Like you have to love every aspect of fighting games to not hate at least part of playing against Elphelt. And her kit is overloaded even for a Guilty Gear character. Like she can kind of just do it all. I'm not saying there aren't matchups like specific character situations or whatever that give her a slightly harder time than others. She just has so much going on for her that, again, I play Chip. Character has almost everything that a fighting game character could have, and I look at Elphelt, I'm like, oh yeah, you got a lot of this stuff too, and it's your version's way better. And that kind of takes me. So yeah, so for hateability there, that's 10 out of 10, easy. The third axis of hatred is the feeling of unfairness, right? And in fighting games, this usually gets cashed out as like, I don't like that the person who's playing this character, it feels like they're getting unfairly rewarded, right? They're getting more value out of the effort they put in. And it's tricky because fighting games are heavily asymmetric. We have so many different characters and so many different ways of playing the game that you never really get like a truly like apples to apples comparison unless you're playing a mirror match or something, right? Like, Ryu versus Ryu, that's like the classic, right? Everything after that, I don't know, whatever. It's some fighting game clown shoes shit. The classic bit of wisdom that PepperySplash gave us, right, was it is a feat of human engineering that this character makes you think you are good at this game. That is about Elphelt, and it's about Exerd Elphelt, and he's specifically talking to Vevion. I love Vevion. If you don't know Vevion, Vevion is one of the strongest active Elphelt players and has been for a long time in the North American FGC scene for Exerd. And Vevion's great. I've played against him a lot. He has fucked me up quite a lot. It's only until relatively recently that I have gotten it all competitive in that matchup. And then I've played Vev in other games. Vev is not good at like Street Fighter. Playing Vevion in Elphelt versus his Elphelt and Exerd versus playing him in any other game, you kind of get the feeling that like that Elphelt players don't realize that it's supposed to be hard to make contact with the opponent. And then once you make contact with the opponent, it's also supposed to be kind of hard to like open them up and get the hit and get damage. So the best way I can explain it is you kind of get the feeling sometimes with characters that inspire hatred that the person who's playing them is not having to work as hard or think as hard or practice as hard or research as hard as you do in order to get the kind of results they're achieving. And that feels bad because we like to believe, all of us kind of like to believe that fighting games are at least somewhat meritocratic, right? That you are rewarded for the effort that you put in. One of the reasons I love Exerd specifically, is that it feels like a game like that to me, but it is obviously disproportionate. So I actually played Elphelt for a week, but I was going through pretty much every character in the game. I was playing them for a little while, and I played Elphelt for a week myself. it's not actually that hard to do the things that I thought would be kind of hard, like using Pineberry to extend a combo, for example, or getting a decent like corner carry combo that also does good damage and gives you good Oki, that kind of stuff, right? Like her tools just kind of work together really well in a way that most other Guilty Gear characters don't quite work that well. So you see that like if I'm combo routing as Chip, I have to make some real ass decisions between, do I want the knockdown? Well, then I'm probably gonna have to give up damage or corner carry or spend a resource, or maybe it's not viable off this specific starter or whatever. And then when I played Elphelt, I was just like, oh, she kind of gets enough of everything without having to invest a whole lot of work into character specific routing or execution or whatever. It's not to say that she doesn't have a high bar, like she is rewarded for doing hard stuff, but she gets a really good reward off of not doing really hard stuff. And I've played a lot of top tiers and a lot of different games, but Elphelt was one of the first that made me actually feel a little bit bored or like a little bit handheld. It felt disappointing because before I actually played Elphelt myself, I was like, oh, well, these Elphelt players that are beating me up are doing stuff that looks really cool and seems really hard. And then when I actually looked at it, it wasn't really that hard. And so it felt a little bit less cool. And if I compare her to some of the other two kind of egregious top tiers in Exert, right? Johnny and Milia. Both of those are also totally hateful characters, but they tend to get a little bit less hate. And with Johnny, it's because the upfront burden of learning Johnny combos, executing them, learning the different situations, learning different like matchup or character specific routes, and then being able to do that effectively in game, like in a competition, takes time. So we don't get that many Johnny players who are fucking shit up like right off the bat. Usually what happens is a new player will pick Johnny, realize that they're not ready to invest that kind of work in it, and then either pick someone else or quit. And so we don't really have that many Johnny players who show up and regularly show us kind of how busted this character is until you look at the higher end of players, right? People like Yosagi and Zwei and Killy. Once you've got the high end of Johnny stuff down, then he's a hateful character. But before then, you know, usually you just see the Johnny player kind of suffering. And so that filters out a lot of it, right? Because we don't have Johnny showing up and just fucking up a beginner bracket. And with Milia, it's similar, right? Her stuff is pretty hard to do. Her optimal stuff is hard to execute effectively. It takes a lot of practice. And if you fuck it up, then you're often worse off than other characters. Similarly, there's that upfront cost that you have to invest before the character is good, and that means you're not going to have a lot of especially like lower skill players complaining about it. I would have to say that in terms of the inspiring the feeling of unfairness, or you know, more uncharitably, the feeling that Elphelt players are carried, right? That is 11 out of 10. She's extremely hateable because her high end might not be quite as high as Milia or Johnny. She has to do a lot less work to get some pretty good results, and that can feel bad. So yeah, I'd say overall in terms of the hateability index, she's looking at like a 28 out of 30 or something like that. That's extremely hateable. But I will end on this or this question on this note. Hating Exert Elphelt is a meme. It is also real, right? Like, she has been busted in pretty much every incarnation. Sign Elphelt was busted. I think they've kind of tried to nerf her since then, and she's still considered busted. There's a lot of people who don't play Exert and will still shit on Exert Elphelt, and that kind of stolen valor, right? Like, you should have that experience of hating Elphelt yourself instead of borrowing someone else's experience there. But it was Kizzie Kay, the fighting game content creator, now he's a TO, former high-level competitive player, who kind of made a meme of it on YouTube for a little bit. And if you're asking for the actual reason why everyone hates Elphelt, I gave you the reasons from in-game why people would hate Elphelt. But if you're wondering why it's a meme to the point that like people who never touch Exert will shit on Elphelt, Kizzie was really the one that took with it and ran it. And then if you see some of his later videos, he kind of walks it back a little bit. So yeah, I hope that's a good answer, and it's a good way to kick off this question series. So thank you for that question. All right, what's next?